Elizabeth has done extensive research in the areas of civility and responsible conduct in higher education, academic rigor, and integrity, internet ethics, disclosure, policy and practices, legal and ethical education technologies, innovation and entrepreneurship, and business leadership relationships, and more. Elizabeth has taught undergrad and graduate courses, led seminars in ethics and related areas. She has received several awards and authored articles and papers in academic and professional journals, and authored chapters and books and encyclopedias. Dr. Buchanan's professional education consists of a bachelor's degree in English and philosophy at Rutgers, a master's degree in library and information science at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and a doctorate at UWM in philosophy. Please give Elizabeth a warm welcome to Nebraska.
And our machine is over here, so I'll have to go back and forth a little bit. Thank you so very much for inviting me. It's a real honor to be here, and I've enjoyed getting to know more and more about NAACFS over the couple of years that I've been at UW-Stout. I was asked to come today and talk about this theme of ethics, quality of life, and professional practice. So let's get into this. Before we start, can we turn off devices? Are we comfortable with that? Okay, so I thought we would start by, I thought I was going to ask you to give your cell phone to someone next to you, but I thought that might create a little too much anxiety, so maybe just turn them off for an hour. And part of that is because of quality of life. Next slide. Thank you, first of all, Marcia and Shirley, who were my points of contact, and my correspondence with Marcia and Shirley over the past, it's actually been 2 years that since we first met, and since we've tried to get together on this occasion. And it's been fascinating to learn more about them and to see how their transactions, every email, every phone call, they just embody professionalism. And the way I've started thinking about it is, with each and every transaction, they've contributed to my professional quality of life. And I've learned from them, and I kind of laugh because the first time I came to this conference, where were we? Texas? Houston? Yeah. I left from this conference and then went to a philosophy conference. And so if you can imagine the room. So we have one male in this room and all women. And I found this to be a most nurturing environment. And I went to my philosophy conference and it was the exact opposite. So I was the one woman in the room. And I started thinking about disciplinary difference, gender, and how all of these things really feed into how much we enjoy our disciplines. And philosophy is a bit more nasty, if you will, than discipline. So I've enjoyed coming back to these conferences. Thank you for the affiliate, the Nebraska affiliate. And back home, I just wanted to thank Carolyn Barnhart. Some of you may know her. She's been a colleague to me and a good friend to me, and has really brought me into this community. So thank you to that. Okay, next slide. This is our premise for the day. This is our premise for the day. An ethical life is built of integrity, honesty, kindness, decency, belief in truth, justice, honor, love, respect, compassion, working together to make life better. Can we agree to that? Next slide. What do those words mean to you? And do we agree when we talk about those principles, those virtues. How do we operate using those words? In my world, we refer to these as virtues. They're things that are universal and they're timeless. Does anyone disagree? When we think about virtues, we think about being as opposed to doing. Does anybody meditate? Meditation, yoga, people in the room? Oftentimes when we talk about being rather than doing. And so we want to think about those principles, ethics, virtues, justice, respect, honesty, compassion, as that's how we exist. It's not just the acts that we do, but it's what we embody. And as I was listening and watching, I think this association takes that principle of being those virtues to a really high level. It's not just about bringing things to a women's shelter. It's the embodiment of those principles of respect for others. Aristotle, the philosopher, talked about the idea of courage. Courage is a virtue. And courage is found between vices, the vices of cowardliness and rashness. And I want to stop and ask you to think about those vices in today's world. Where do we see cowardliness, rashness? Think about our politics. Think about our technologies. Think about our workplaces, our schools, our universities. And our goal, what I want to do as an emphasis is I want to help people promote courage and to avoid those vices. And I do this in a couple of different ways at UW-Stout. I have a really neat job. I'm really lucky. My job is to promote ethics across our campus through curriculum, through our campus activities, as well as through our community. And it's that idea of being about ethics, being ethics. And I've been in this position now 4 years, and I don't know if you read the papers, you might know there's a few things going on in Wisconsin politics right now. Just a little bit. And it's getting harder and harder to keep people focused on courage. And instead we're seeing a lot of rashness in our discourse. We're seeing a lot of cowardliness. And so it's my job to keep our campus upbeat. It's my job to make sure people remember those principles, those virtues. And it's hard right now. I'll talk more about resilience later in the session. So when we think about virtues, oftentimes we'll think about our code of ethics, codes of ethics, our professional associations, principles. So you all know you have a new code of ethics as of a year or two ago, right? It specifically mentions ethics and integrity. So when someone asks you what you do and what you teach and what you embody, what do you tell them? What are your values? What are your professional values? And what do you stand for? Sorry.
That's an honesty.
Honesty. What else? Come on.
Integrity.
Integrity. Anything else? Love and respect. Yeah. So let's look at the next slide. This comes from your code of ethics. And these are some of your fundamental principles, your core values. And as I looked at this, I bolded a few words that really stood out to me. They really caught my eye. They made me think about this is what you believe in, this is what you stand for. family, fundamental unit of society, diversity, valuing all people, supporting lifelong learning, integrity, ethical behavior, seeking new ideas and initiatives, this idea of change, embracing change. Change is scary. A lot of people don't like change. And we fall back. In the face of change, we often fall back to those vices, cowardliness. The last piece, promoting an integrative and holistic approach. It's aligned with the body of knowledge. And you're supporting professionals who work with individuals, families, and communities. Okay. So you have this set of principles. It guides your professional practice. It probably feeds over into your quality of life, right? Not too many people can stay in a profession where their personal values clash with their professional values, right? There really needs to be an alignment between your personal values and your professional. Those people that operate in that space where you have some conflicts, it can be very, very challenging and very, very difficult to not have alignment with those values. You would feel kind of like a fraud going to work each day. Right? You work and you live. We spend most of our lives at work, right? So we want to make sure we have good alignment. So what happened? And when I say what happened, I mean in the broadest sense. Okay, we're thinking about individuals, we're thinking about communities, we're thinking about society right now. So think back a little bit in your lifetimes and looking at this room, and I think we can all remember before the internet. You all remember that? You all remember back in the 1980s? It was kind of maybe the late 1980s, 1990s, and there were all of these predictions. Technology was going to make things very easy for us. We were only going to work 3 or 4 days a week because technology was going to make everything so much easier. Okay, believe it or not, yeah. Our lives were going to be reduced. Our stress levels were going to just plummet because things around us were super easy. Right? Our jobs as teachers, we are going to be liberated. We're going to have so much free time. We benefit from these greater efficiencies. Okay? So our work lives will be easier, and our professional lives, our home lives simplified. So this is how our lives as teachers, as educators, was going to be simplified. And you see the focal point is in the technology, right? The teacher isn't there. The teacher is now just kind of one of many of these things. I don't know if you can read all of them in the back, but we're going to have things like TeacherTube instead of YouTube, but a TeacherTube, SchoolTube. We'll be using all of these different collaboration online. We'll be using, again, YouTube and window tutorials. Where's the teacher? I'm still not sure if the teacher comes through Skype or through where the teacher is. But this is how technology is going to make the classroom a whole lot easier. On the home level, we were robots. We're going to save all of us. They're going to cook our eggs, tell us when we needed to fill our refrigerators. They're going to tell us, make everything easier. Has this happened? So, in those two scenarios, what's missing? Okay, so the first one, technology as the educator, technology as the panacea that will save us. And then in the second one, our home lives would be mediated by these tools, these things that would help us. Hence, our quality of lives would be improved. So, just a couple of other points on this. There were books, there were articles written at the end of work. I don't know if anybody remembers this. But the goal was that we'd be liberated. Right? The end of work was also to shift our social order. And in in principle, what was supposed to happen was we would be a more just society. We wouldn't have the disparities that we did. Technology was going to be pure, a social fix. Everybody would have access to it. All of our classrooms would be wired. All of our teachers would get the education and continuing ed that they needed. There was more attention on this idea of meaningful lives, personal fulfillment, and social justice. Okay, that's where we were a number of years ago. Okay, so what happened? How many people in the room have robots cooking breakfast? Anybody? Okay, how many people have so much more free time? In your classrooms, in your home lives? Anybody? Okay. Less stress? Anybody less stressed? Okay. Because I'm a little biased, you know, again, I'm in Wisconsin, and we've had a rough few years. So I wonder across the board, you know, how many teachers right now feel that things have gotten a whole lot easier for us. So what happened? All right. Well, here's one sense of what happened. Social environment. What are they all doing? You can see they're all looking at their phones. So they're together, they're together but not social. They're together but looking inward, looking this way really. Okay, so that's one thing that's happened. We've seen a shift away from a social sphere to more and more of an individual sphere. Or what else happened? Okay, so these are a couple of ways of thinking about this. You don't get to 5 million friends without making 500 million friends without making a few enemies. What's the quality of relationships when you have 500 million friends? Do you really have 500 million friends? And then how do you define friendship? How do you define respect? How do you define your relationship with others? This comic I thought was pretty funny. Do you remember before the internet? Oh yeah, totally. What was it like? Not having a phone or a computer to distract you? Yeah. It was so boring. All the time. I just sat there. It was the worst. But wasn't it like more fulfilling, engaging? Wasn't worth it. I still get bored, not like we do. So we're continually pulling at these ideas of boredom, of social interaction. What was it like? Do we have a historical frame? And is that frame something we want to remember? Can you live 2 weeks without social media? So as an educator, I've done this experiment. Students hate me for it, but I've asked them to go offline for a week. Okay, first that didn't work. They couldn't do it. Absolutely couldn't do it. Part of it is we've done this to ourselves because we put everything in an online forum, we put everything somewhere that they have to access. But it was too long. So we tried, a day. Can you go a day without social media? Can you go a day without Facebook? How many people think you could? Okay. A day? How about a week? Okay. 2 weeks? Are we pushing it? Okay. This is becoming an important consideration for us in teaching, in learning. I have a colleague though who's now kind of using this opposite approach to what I've done, asking students to not connect. So Professor Marky Bloomer, who teaches family counseling, she teaches a 4-hour seminar. And what she started realizing is, students were kind of looking, half paying attention, talking. And so she decided in the middle of the class she would do a 2-minute tech break. And so collectively, as a group, they stop the lesson. Everybody can get 2 minutes to check their phones, to check their Facebook pages, to see is there something happening. And so I think this is, we want to think about how to co-opt our fascination, our obsession with technologies in the classroom. And use things like that. I think students, maybe we have become that world that we can't go a day without social media. We miss too much. So turn it. So some interesting innovations I think are coming out of teaching in light of technology. So okay, so this happened. What else happened? This is a teacher. And the teacher is juggling. The teacher's juggling books, computers, pencils, normal classroom things. What does this represent? This represents the many different roles that we're being asked to fulfill. We're being asked to do more and more with less. We're being asked to be jugglers, not educators. What else happened? All right. So this is from my home state, and so here this is our governor, Scott Walker, and this is Buchanan, and they were meeting in Wisconsin. And what this image represents, and for kind of bridging Wisconsin with the country with our green majors, okay, our football team. That's really, the football team is really the only piece of civility we have left right now in the state because it's become so polarized. So this is very symbolic, this picture. I specifically chose it because our state, we're completely polarized. Our teachers were infighting. In our chapter, we've had arguments about how far do we go? How do we represent? Who do we represent in our affiliate? Serious conversations. Okay. And we could continue. So we see what's happened. We had these predictions about how our quality of lives was going to change. Okay, then we had all of these things happen that really haven't given us any better quality of life. They haven't improved our professional practices, right? So those things, technologies, politics, social spheres, all of these things are happening, and what's coming out of it? Lots and lots of issues. Polarization, divisiveness, incivility, insensitivity, bullying, unhealthy workplaces. It's so depressing, isn't it? It's horribly depressing. The words, though, these are the words that pop out when you talk to people about their work lives right now, their home lives, because so much, I just read a statistic about 30 to 40% of workers, once they leave their place of work, still check work email after hours. So our boundaries are diminishing. We're not able to keep our work lives at work and our home lives at home. So we've become overworked, we're stressed out, we're burned out. And these last two things, budget cuts. I asked this morning at breakfast, how's Nebraska doing in terms of its education budget? Good? Not good? Better than Wisconsin, I think. But what this is doing is it's causing a lot of uncertainty. And in the face of uncertainty, we need more than ever to have core values and core principles that we rely on. And that's where these virtues come in: respect, respect, love, what are some of the others? Honesty. It's in the face of all of this, that those principles, that first screen that we looked at today, has to be our guidepost, has to be our compass, our moral compass. In the past 10 years or so, instances of workplace bullying have increased in pretty significant fashion. Some will say, well, it's just the reporting. We know more about it now. But even so, why are we seeing such increases in workplace bullying? Why are we seeing more and more incivility? Where is this coming from? And what do we do? How do we work around these? How do we work to flip this, focus on things like civility? Right now on my campus, I'm leading a civility event. And what's fascinating is we can't even get consensus on what word to use, because civility itself is a loaded word. And there are people who say, I'm not paid to come to work and be your friend. I'm not paid to be nice. I do my job and I do it well. Why do I have to do all these other things? So there's fundamental tensions, even around what I would think of as a pretty core value. We expect our students to behave civilly in the classroom, right? What do we do if they're not? Call them out on it. But yet to our peers, to our coworkers, oftentimes we're much less than civil. So we're not sure what words we're going to use for at Stout right now. The idea of healthy workplace keeps coming back. We're saying we want people to have a healthy environment. And that doesn't mean you have to be best friends, but it means that there's a level of respect that is just the natural order of things. But it's hard. It's hard getting people to even see it that way. Okay. So I like to think of it in this term, that stressed is desserts and stuff like that. That's supposed to make you laugh. All right, so let's look at our intersection. We've talked a bit about this overlap or these intersections between our personal, our professional, our organizational. And this just kind of shows you where we are, where these spheres fit into each other. So we have our personal, and that's our core, right? We feed into a profession based on our core values. Again, that idea that if you're not embodying some values that are part of the profession, it's larger at the organizational level. So are there people that, you don't have to answer this, but think about whether or not your personal values, your professional values are ever out of sync with your institution or your organization. Right? Sometimes this happens in education right now. Like again, we had this conversation in practice that sometimes we have people on our school boards, for example, who are educators, who may not have kids in the school system, who may not have the values that we think of as related to education. And that's a challenge. But organizationally, we all have we have an organizational culture, and it's typically from the top down that culture is defined. But what I like to suggest is that we all play a role in the bottom up in forming organizational culture. I understand it's hard though, because of all those things on that last slide, being overworked. This table over here saying something about lost a position. Is that right? Someone saying you got one position.
That's up to small school teacher.
Yeah. So if we're a one woman shop in a department, it's hard to create a culture that feeds out to the larger. But we do our best. And then society. societally, again, we're at a point, and I've seen some research on this, that we're at an extremely polarized level in society at large, politically, ideologically. I read the paper this morning, big news from Indiana. It's going to really cause some challenges there. So there's a religious freedom law that was passed that's being interpreted. I haven't read the bill, but basically that a business can choose to turn away gay, lesbian, LGBTQ customers. So think about Indiana right now. A week from now, will be the Final Four. There's some gaming convention, Gen Con, brings tons and tons of people. And all of a sudden, we're seeing the ideological divide take place. And we're going to watch this. We're going to watch this as a society, and we're going to see, just as it plays out, two different sides, two different arguments, two different poles. And it's going to be real challenging to see what the middle ground is, because more and more that polarization is not allowing for any kind of consensus building. We draw lines in the sand more and more, and we refuse to blur those lines. And that's a dangerous place to be when you're so polarized and so committed to this. The Ethics Center that I run, one of our core values, our principles, is that we teach our students to disagree respectfully in the face of difference, in the face of uncertainty, in the face of global challenges. And teaching people to disagree respectfully is a skill. And in today's technology-laden world, the skill of disagreement is, we're losing it. Think about the comment sections of newspapers, online newspapers. Think about the anonymous boards that exist where people can say anything, not post their name, not post anything, but just their spout. And what does that say? Are we afraid then to take responsibility for our words? Are we afraid to engage in a civil disagreement? Has anybody spent any time looking at those comments? It's like the cesspool of society, because it's all, to me, many of them refuse to engage in a logical, rational, civil discussion. Okay, so this is where we are in our personal lives, vis-a-vis our work. Okay, so what? I mentioned civility. This is a kind of long quote, so you can all read it. This is how we want to think about civility. We want to kind of encourage our students, our colleagues, our peers to think about civility as a way of fostering self-awareness. Okay? It's not just about being nice to each other. It's not just about being polite, saying good morning. Civility requires work, and this is something that we're not always willing to accept. It's the hard work of staying present, even with those with whom we have deep-rooted and even perhaps fierce disagreements. Civility is about being open. It's about being open to hear, to learn, to teach, and to change. I hope you're seeing some patterns here with some of these words. These words, hear, learn, teach, change, they're represented again back in your code of ethics. There's a real nice connection there with what the vision here is, with what civility is really finding common ground. That's our point for dialogue. We can't engage in meaningful dialogue when that line in the sand is drawn and neither party will cross over. Differences have to be appreciated. Differences have to be fostered. Differences can't be looked at as something you have to fix. Differences can be enriching. And civility is also about patience, grace, and strength of character. Okay? So we want to always be thinking about this embodiment. This embodiment principle. This goes back to, like I said before, being the virtues. Working through those in our everyday lives, our classrooms, our home lives. What else? How do we do this? One of the things that I'm questioned about a lot of times is, well, I'm doing my best. I'm overworked, I'm underpaid, I'm stressed out, I'm trying to do this, trying to do that. And we oftentimes default on our own civility simply out of time. We can't always be present. So if we think about civility as that idea of being present and open and listening. And it's hard to do that all the time, right? So one of the ways that I've been working through these challenges with civility is through resilience. And there's a whole body of literature on resilience. And as individuals, as human beings, we have great capacity for resilience. We really do. Sometimes we don't realize it. Sometimes we just don't know how deep to dig. And we don't give ourselves enough credit. What is resilience? Resilience is in the context of exposure to significant adversity. Resilience is the capacity of individuals to navigate their way through psychological, social, cultural, and physical resources that can sustain your well-being. And their capacity individually and collectively to negotiate for the resources to be provided in culturally meaningful ways. Okay, this comes from something called the Resilience Project. I think that resilience allows us thinking through what is it to be resilient, finding that resilience, being able to negotiate, navigate through these various spheres. I think that's a place where we need to talk about this more. We need to be more willing to admit our shortcomings, our weaknesses, and we need to be willing to make this, to navigate these spheres. Resilience helps collectively. So while we think of resilience on an individual basis, my capacity for resilience, it's really much more of a collective approach. In today's environment, my context again, it may be different from yours, but the polarization, the ways in which our teachers, whether it's K-12 or higher education, feel attacked right now, feel undervalued, feel betrayed, feel undermined. And more and more, this concept of resilience is coming out as a way for us to rebound and to say, why am I doing this? Why am I in education? We're in education because that's our value. Those are our core values. That's where we want to be. And so the external challenges around us, we need to respond. We need to respond individually and collectively. So in short, ethics, quality of life, and professional practice demands that we step up, demands that we're courageous, that we find our balance between our home lives, work lives, our technology lives, our real human lives, our humanity, and that we find our virtues and remember our virtues. And how do we do that? How much resilience, how much stability, where, how, when? We need to think about our skill set. Oftentimes, this is a decision-making process, and most of us do this every day, right? We make hundreds of decisions every day. But oftentimes, because of the speed, oftentimes because of the complexities of our days, we don't think about that decision-making process. We rely on our gut, we rely on just quick make a decision. And it helps in the face of thinking through challenges and the complexities of our environments today to be more cognizant, to be more aware of your decision-making processes. And so we want to, when you're faced with a difficult challenge, and this goes to why, how we can have a meaningful argument. And I like to use the word argument. What's another word for it? Debate, discussion. Think about the situation itself. You know, oftentimes we fail to take into consideration the whole. We're not looking holistically, but we get into kind of a side level. We zero in on little pieces of the problem as opposed to looking at the holistic. So defining the situation and recognizing your biases is really the first step to healthy, productive decision-making and argumentation. If we can't recognize our biases, that line in the sand is going to, again, be real hard to cross because we think we're here. Recognizing our biases, we all have them. It's not unhealthy. It doesn't make you a racist, doesn't make you sexist, bigot. We all have ingrained biases. When you default to not acknowledging them or recognizing them, that's where we start to see sexism, racism. Feelings. Our feelings are important. It's always been kind of no, there's no place for emotion in decision making. And that's not true. Our feelings are very important. We see this coming out of women's studies, literature, psychology, all over the place. The importance of emotion. I cry too at work. My office, everyone comes to my office to cry. And they know it's a sacred place. But feeling and letting our emotions be heard and seen is very important. So we're listening. We need to listen more. There's what is a cartoon right now running around, dog, wag more, bark less. And that's kind of this idea of listening. Listen to your colleagues, listen to those with whom you disagree. Identifying your stakeholders. Who's involved? Why do you, who are you defending? Or who are you offending? And asking that question, what do you stand for in this? What do you stand for? What are the stakes? So we're doing these thought processes. We're also looking at our codes of ethics, which has been a point for us today. We're looking at our organizational and our institutional policies. And ultimately asking ourselves those questions. What am I supporting? What virtues am I supporting? Also, again, we often default to a place where we may be making decisions just on the fly, out of convenience. We have to do this sometimes. Sometimes we really need to pull back and think about our competence. And this is about collective decision-making. Seeking colleagues, seeking experts, seeking guidance from someone else, an internal colleague, external colleague. Don't be afraid to reach out when we're in the face of a challenging decision. Still in this discussion of making decisions, having discussions, this process of evaluating alternatives is very important. always right the first time. Believe it or not, I'm not always right. And that doesn't mean it's personal. This is something that I've seen more and more in our context. In Wisconsin, it's real hard to make a comment that isn't a political comment or a budgetary comment without it being perceived as a personal attack to someone. These are called ad hominem attacks, Latin, and more and more the desire to engage in dialogue is shut down because of these ad hominem attacks. So I try and start difficult conversations that I have to have sometimes with people. I say, please remember this is not personal. Please remember we're talking about your profession. We're talking about your work activities. This is not personal. And I understand because you commit so much to your work life, it's hard for you to see that distinction between the personal and the professional. But make sure people understand when you're in the face of a disagreement that it's not personal most of the time. This one, when we talk about decision making, we all have kind of our gut feelings, right? How many people rely on your own gut feeling? I think we should. Absolutely. I think we should more than we do. But oftentimes, if we don't listen to our gut, we want to ask this question: Are we confident in disclosing a decision? Are we confident in saying to someone, this is what I've decided. Here's why. If you feel that conflict, if there's a kind of a disagreement between what you're saying publicly and what you're feeling on the inside, you want to really evaluate that. You really want to think about what that conflict means. Are you representing or misrepresenting yourself, your profession, your organization? Think about whether or not you'd be comfortable, and I would say going home to your family, your friends, and telling them what you did at work that day, and some of the decisions that you had to make. And if you feel uncomfortable, I mean, some discomfort's good when you work through these issues, but if you feel that real conflict emerging, I think that's a challenge and something I wouldn't want to see someone in that place of tension for too long. And finally, when we think about decision making, we never make decisions in isolation, right? We make decisions and they're cumulative. And we always want to think about the precedent that we're setting when we make decisions. What message does it send? I tell people all the time, it's not just the real, but it's also the perceived. So the real and the perceived, sometimes they're the same thing, sometimes they're not. But think about the perceptions of your decisions, your actions, how you are, how you embody. So think about precedent. All right, and then these last couple of slides, and we'll have some discussion. There's two different ways of thinking about this. You might not recognize this one. This comes from a research paper, how to behave, basically. Right? These are some of our ground rules. And if you look at them, I mean, they're pretty simple. Right? Paying attention, acknowledging others, giving the best, kill, etc., etc. Don't shift responsibility. All these things. They're kind of our rules to live by, right? Anyone remember this one though? This Where's this from? And so you have the slides, you have access to the slides. Spend some time looking back and forth between those two sets of principles, those sets of rules, because they're very similar. You know, this became a huge popular book. The other one, you know, probably 10 people read research paper, but they're really quite compatible. You know, this one does say flush too. That's but the fundamental principles. What I want you to take away from our talk today, our time together, is this theme of virtues, our individual virtues, our professional virtues, our societal virtues, and conflicts. I want you to think about what we embody and how we embody and how our actions flow from that. Actions express priorities. So let your actions speak. I want you to think about ways of disagreement and think about ways of respecting others in a time of lots of technological chaos, lots of political chaos, lots of financial chaos. There's a lot of change around us. There's the saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. To some degree, I believe that. There's repeat patterns, but the complexity continues to increase, and our capacity to be steadfast to our values, to our principles, to find that resilience, to be mindful, to civility as a present state, something that we just do, something that we just are. Those are the things that will get us through challenging times. Those are the things that are our core values, right? So read your code of ethics. If you haven't read it recently, read it. Because it's very similar to this in many ways. It's very similar to the last one as well. And our theme then takes us back to where we started. Ethics, justice, respect, honesty, truth. That's where it is. And I'd be happy to take some questions.
So we talk about resiliency, and I think one of the things that's really missing, and I'm not sure we have good, healthy coping skills in U.S. culture anymore. And to me, you can't have resiliency without having coping skills. So I'd be curious to know, I'm hearing some amens as I say this, and the key word is healthy. We have lots of coping skills, but a vast majority of them are not healthy. We overeat, we overdrink, we watch way too much television and video games, We have way too much screen time. Social media becomes part of our coping. So my biggest question is, how do we teach and help young people, and even ourselves, gain good coping skills? Because that's what gives us resiliency in my book.
That's a very common, great question. I could answer it in a couple of different ways, but I think that to me the most straightforward is being mindful of how are we defining a healthy life. Okay, first of all, that's something. I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old, and we are continually battling about what is the balance between being on the computer, doing something else, being with friends, etc. And so I've started coping and helping them cope with challenges by setting aside time every night, individually with one, then the other, and talking through their days, talking through their challenges, talking through what positive things happen that day, asking questions. I think and I'm speaking somewhat in our busyness of our lives, we don't ask enough questions, or we don't ask deep questions. We ask very superficial questions and get very superficial answers, and we let that go. To me, that's sending a message that's connected with coping that, just kind of scratch the surface. Coping is about digging deep, right? Coping is about asking tough questions and encouraging a deep response. So for me, teaching coping skills is about listening. It's about teaching our students or our friends, our family, to ask questions and to be present. More and more, and that's one of the reasons why I asked you to put away your cell phones today, because most of our days, our time is kind of spent half listening or half doing, because we're kind of either looking at our phone, thinking about something else, and when we're in that kind of superficial state, I think our coping skills decline. So that idea of mindfulness, and I think we don't give our young kids enough credit to be able to find their mindfulness. They just don't have the language oftentimes, but when we talk to our kids or students about being present, listening, knowing who to trust. I think we're not talking about trust enough either. It'd be interesting to hear your talk later about this kind of the cyber world and trust. We need trust. Human beings need trust relationships, and they need those in a physical, face-to-face, not just an online format. So I guess I would say, listen, ask, dig deep, listen. I keep coming back to listening and asking. What about others? What do you recommend as far as
A lot of different lens, different perspective.
different perspectives?
Step outside of their, you look at it from this angle. I have teenage daughters, and they have this problem. Well, what's this person's view? How are they approaching it? Look at a different angle.
Yeah.
And that seems to help them coping, because then they realize they're not thinking. They think about themselves, it's all inner.
Yes, it's all inner, and that's going back to some of those slides. Thinking about alternatives, thinking about the other. What is an other? How do you disagree with yourself?
Okay, sorry about resilience in the definition you have those words about resources, psychological resources, cultural resources, physical resources. I think when we're dealing with coping skills, part of it really is helping people identify those resources. I don't think people really think about the fact that when you said dig deep, we don't realize how strong we are. Like your psychological resources, really, everybody has those. And then, we talk about different ways of reacting, that's a little wrong with that. All of those things are resources, and if we can help people identify, that word to me means so much, resources. There are so many different things that can help you, but if we can only see this much of it, you can't use them.
It's a great one.
We had a counselor one time tell us, my family, that we need to have those constant conversations. And I think that when you have those constant conversations, it doesn't matter if it's with your students or your children, you have to take time. So that time has to be cut out when that teachable moment happens. And you have a child asking you those questions, you have to take the time to use that teachable moment to have that conversation. And those conversations, I swear, for my family, those conversations were really what has saved us and has stopped that cycle of violence and that addictive compulsive behavior. So those conversations were something that we really stressed as having when they need to happen. And they have to, you're right, they have to put down their technology. You have to be able to make that a priority with whatever system you're in.
I think it's not surprising, but still statistics, there's still research, the importance of having dinner together. One simple thing. You know, how long have you all been saying this in this field? Have dinner together. But still, that one time of the day in our very busy lives, even if it's, you know, the 20 minutes before one goes to practice or before you go back to school for an evening event, those times, I think, they help build our capacity and our resilience. We talk about those resources.
And it's also a coping mechanism, so you were talking about those coping skills and building those. That's part of the mechanism.
What else? Other comments or questions?
Talk about Wisconsin and the polarization, and we're seeing that a lot in society and the effect of social media teaching to it. So at what point do we start in the right direction, or is this just going to get worse and worse? Like, big picture, long term, what do we see for a future generation?
Did everybody hear the question? Okay. The question is the comment and question. I've spoken a lot about the divisions and polarization in Wisconsin, and the comment is that we're seeing that kind of large scale across society. Social media is contributing to that, to those divides, fueling kind of the nastiness. And what do we think? What's the future? You know, will we keep going down this path of more and more division, or is there a point at which we will find some place of reconciliation? Is that a good way to put it? And I think I hate to sound so pessimistic, but I'm not real convinced that we're going to improve, you know, in the immediate future. I think that politics, society, I think it's become this, it's like a sick form of entertainment. And so there's too much exposure to things and too much dwelling on things that aren't really important. And it's unhealthy. And until we have those days, so, you know, and this is why I try and say, you know, one day a week in our house, it's not a lot, it doesn't always work, but one day a week in our house, there's no TV, no computers, no kind of outside world. It's like we play board games or we cook, you know, things like that. And so it's kind of like one at a time, you know, one day at a time. But I think the speed with which social media has the speed with which it's developed and taken such a hold on our lives. I think our students, you know, our younger students and our kids, they don't know another world at this point. They are really growing up, and it's our job, really. I think that's our fundamental job anymore as educators is to show as much difference, to show as much fairness and justice as we can, and avoid buying into that binary mindset. How are we going to do it? I wish I had the answer. I wish I could say, you know, I think part of it is education, obviously. You know, teaching our kids before they post something to Facebook, thinking about what it is they're saying. You know, who does it impact? What position are they holding? I think it's about talking to people that we think we have nothing in common, and it's not always easy. I think there's so many layers and so many variables that are complicating a healthier path forward. It's quick, it's easy. We can get our news, only the news that we want. You know, the news that fits our ideological perspective, the news that fits, you know, very easy through our channels, our social media channels, and more we're just simply reliant on those. And so breaking those bonds opening the door to other perspectives, I think is just absolutely critical.
I was just going to say one thing that I always try to focus on with my students is reminding them that to have a critical view on things, because you can watch one news program and get a totally different perspective because that's their opinion. And just to always, just because I'm standing here telling you something, it's not cut and dry. So be very critical of what you hear, because they put out what they want you to feel. If they want you to feel like danger, that's what you'll get. If you want their opinion, it's their opinion. And just to be critical and mindful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And over kind of the big picture, there's more and more of blurring of reality and, again, this entertainment or fictional environment. There's a kind of a new interest in documentaries, but they're kind of fictionalized documentaries now coming out. So yeah, I think it's, yeah, we always have to ask, what are you defending, or what is your position? What is this position, and what is their stake in it? And I told Marcia earlier, we were too reliant on our technologies. Last night, I went to Google and put in the Thai restaurant, which I just a block or so away. And first thing popped up on Google, and I called and ordered, walked over here, and they said, I don't have anything for you. And I looked at my phone, and they said, well, where did you call? And Google, I thought, would have known that I was here in Lincoln, and instead I ordered food from Boston. So Google doesn't know everything. It knows a lot.